Hello, students. This is the third video here. It's the second day's worth of work, and we're reviewing you, getting you ready for a test coming up this Friday. And running a little late today, but I'm pretty sure I know what the test will be on and can give you some pretty good hints. So most of you can get a pretty good grade. Let's talk about circular flow of economic activity. I don't think this is real important, so let's go through it quickly, but they might put one question on there. And the whole idea behind the circular flow of economic activity, and I'm going to go ahead and click, and at any point you can pause the film and write this down. But household supply resources. Remember the four factors of production: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability. That's the four factors of production. They supply that to the resource market, and they demand goods and services from businesses. Well, how do the businesses produce the stuff that the people are buying? They're doing that through the product market, and they're using the same four factors of production that the households are supplying. So what's happening is this money is going around and around and around. And the way I think of it is like a washing machine. When if you have one of the ones with the glass on the front, you can sit and look at the clothes like they have in a laundromat. I'm assuming a lot of you have never been to a laundromat. I have been to many in my time. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and show you the next graph here. This is an example of one. I do not want you to write this down. I just want you to look at it. Again, I do not think, if they're only giving you 2 essays, this is an important enough topic for them to put on there, but who knows what they're going to do. We do know that they're going to try and cut down on the cheating. We're pretty sure these questions could be pretty involved, but you're going to be able to use notes in your book, but it's going to be timed. So my goal is, I'm starting to get a lot of ideas in my head here. My goal is to make sure that you have very good notes. And so if you have to go to your notes to look up some topic, that it's everything you need is going to be right there. You can figure it out. But what you see here, and again, just look at this. You might want to pause the video and just look at it. You understand the money's going around and around and around, and households buy things from the product markets, but then they also provide factors of production to the factor markets, and the money's going around and around. All right, I said that too many times. Moving on. Okay, GDP. Now, here's pretty much what I've decided is going to be on Friday's test. Probably 3 big topics: GDP, unemployment, and probably the business cycle. Okay, so this is where you really want to start paying attention here. This is my Wednesday lecture. And for my Thursday lecture, I intend to probably give you a worksheet, and I'll show you how to do it, and I'll give you all the formulas. I'm assuming if you can use your book in your notes that you can use a calculator on this test. I don't know. I'm going to try and find that out. But I'm assuming that, so for those of you who struggle with the math, as long as you have the formulas in front of you, I think you'll be okay. So anyway, here's GDP. It's the total dollar value of all final goods and services produced in a given year. And it's one of the 3 ways of measuring an economy's health. And the formula we use, there's really 3 big formulas, but the number one is the expenditure formula. And here it is. We spent quite a bit of time on it. This is the so-called C plus I plus G plus X minus IM. So go ahead and now remember, this is going to be on your test. How we're going to do this Friday. We're going to do it differently this week. But go ahead and write this down, and you can put X. I prefer the X minus IM because you're going to have to calculate GDP Friday. And so you're going to need to know that exports are a good thing for your economy and imports are a bad thing. Okay, so we're going to spend some time on this. Okay, so you might want to pause it and write this down. But remember, cigarettes will kill your mama. Again, now that you can use your notes on the test, maybe that's not that important for you to memorize this, but I still think it's good to know because remember, you're going to probably be under a time crunch. Normally, the AP macro kids get done early. I normally have my kids so well trained that, most of my students get done early. And I suspect that will not happen this year, but who knows? All right, so moving on here. All right, here's what counts. Okay, if a good is produced but not sold, I think the I there stands, I think I put that there. I think it stands for inventory. A lot of confusion about inventory. And if you can see an inventory question, I'm going to try and work one in on Friday's test. I think of these as kind of hard. But the example I always use is of a car dealership. And so if you have a car dealership who wants to always have, remember, if you go onto a car dealership looking for a car and you find the car you want, but it's the wrong color, you're probably going someplace else. So remember, I was an accounting manager at a car dealership for a year. I didn't get to tell you that many of these stories because I didn't finish the year with you. So I've been in the business. And the deal is, let's say they want to keep 700 cars on the lot, okay? And they're selling 200 a month. Well, you can kind of figure out they're going to be buying 200 more cars every month. Recession comes along, people don't have money, they're not as picky because they're broke. They might not have 700. But if you think the economy is about to boom and you want to make sure that you're going back to having 700 cars on your lot, you're going to increase your buying of cars. And the car goes into GDP not when it's sold, but when it's produced. So as soon as that, they make that car, that goes into GDP. And that is probably the trickiest part of this, the so-called inventory question. Okay, because it doesn't have to be cars. It can be clothes. It can be, sewing machines. It can be anything you want. Cell phones. If a goods is produced in a foreign country, it does not go in this country's GDP. Now, I don't want to confuse you. Obviously, many Japanese cars are made here. I won't be that tricky, and hopefully they won't either. The key thing is, where is it made? If a Honda is made here in the United States, I remember a few years ago I saw this massive Kia plant right across the border in Tennessee. I left Chattanooga, Tennessee, headed towards Nashville, and this is one of the biggest buildings I've ever seen in my life. It's a Kia factory here in the United States. So even though a Kia is a foreign made car, the fact that it's made here shows it goes in our GDP. So it's where it's made. Okay. Government spending on the military. I don't know why they put that here, because it seems to me that's common sense. If you're buying tanks for your army, it goes in your GDP if it's made in your country. Moving on. And here you see increase in business inventories. I already explained that. Like I said, that's probably the trickiest part of this. So you might want to underline, circle inventories in your notes. Okay, going on to the next slide. What does not count? Intermediate goods. And I did a big deal on this in class. And I always use the example of tires or spark plugs. I'll go with the spark plug here. So, tires is the one on the example. So if you're a Firestone Tire Company, that used to be one of our biggest tire manufacturers. If you make tires to be sold in the tire store, they go into GDP then. For instance, if you have a flat tire and you need a new tire and you go to the tire store and you buy it went into GDP when it was made. However, if Ford Motor Company is buying only Firestone tires to go on all their vehicles, when that tire was sold to Ford, it did not go into GDP until the car was finished. Now, I do not have a lot of time to go over this. We did this I'll give you another example, the one I gave you in class. If you grow apples, if you produce apples, the apples go in GDP, when you grow them, I guess, and harvest them. Nobody's going to give you a question this complicated. So, you grow apples and you put them out there, that goes in GDP. However, if you sell your apples to some company that makes apple pies, it does not go into GDP until the apple pie is done. Okay, so again, if you have any questions on intermediate goods, can be slightly tricky. Most likely on the exam, they'll use the word intermediate good. They won't give you an example. And so intermediate good doesn't go into GDP. Used goods. So if you want to help the economy, buy a new car. If you buy a used car, sure, the person you bought it from now has money. Maybe they'll go buy a new car. But the actual cost of the used car does not go into GDP. It went into GDP when it was made. Non-market activities, if marijuana, cocaine, heroin. Now, if you're in one of these states where marijuana is legal, yes, that goes into GDP. That is actually one argument a lot of the people who want marijuana legalized use, that it'll pump up the GDP numbers. True story. Okay, moving on here. Transfer payments, Social Security, welfare, food stamps, like this big government giveaway, where they're giving money out now to help people, and they should be. I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I'm glad they are. I think the poor people, I already said that yesterday, need more than the middle class and upper classes do. That does not go into GDP. Nothing has been produced. What the government is hoping these people will do, well, first off, they want them to pay their rent and buy groceries. They don't want people starving, but they want them buying stuff to benefit the economy. The problem is, I know I'm getting slightly off topic here, but if you have a general understanding of economics, it will always help you on this exam. What they want people to do is buy new things so that the economy is boosted and you give somebody a job. The problem is most people now getting money are going to hold on to it. The phrase that's been in the newspapers, they're hoarding cash. They're worried they're going to lose their job next month. So if you're worried you're going to lose your job, you don't spend money, you save it, which is not helping the economy. All right, stock transactions. If you buy stock, nothing has been manufactured. Now, the stockbroker's commission is a service. His commission, how much you pay the stockbroker, that would go into GDP. He or she's provided a service. But actual buying of stock does not go in because nothing has been made. All right, moving on. Shortcomings of GDP. If you stay at home and watch kids, it doesn't count. If you go volunteer at a school and teach people to read, it doesn't count. If you take a day off from work to go coach a kid's soccer game, it does not count. Leisure, and here you go. You can argue that if you take now, if you go on vacation and you spend money, that's going into some countries' GDP. If you go on vacation here, it goes into our GDP. But if you go on vacations to another country, it's helping their GDP. But if you just take a day off because you need what we call a mental health day and you don't produce, does not benefit GDP. Now you may, I don't want to get off topic on this, but if you're a healthier, happier individual, that may boost GDP in the long run, but in the short run, it doesn't do anything. I'm not sure that I even know what this means. Does not include improvements in product quality. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I guess it makes sense. But it's got to boost the sales value of the product. So I'm not sure what that means. The underground economy, we've already talked about that. That's illegal activity. All right, GDP overstated. Oh, wow. Damage to the environment. Remember, if your house burns down, your insurance company is going to give you a check. Now, if your insurance company gives you a check for, say, $200,000 because your house burned down, nothing has been built. So that does not help GDP. However, when you build the house, that goes into GDP. And I probably used this example in class this year. If a tornado came through Apopka and blew off everybody's roof, but nobody died, no roads were blocked, anything like that, then everybody would need a new roof. All of that would benefit GDP. And I will say about, I said nobody died, and this is pretty morbid to say this, but if people died, undertakers provide a service. That would go into GDP. So if you get sick and you go to the doctor, that is a service. So if Americans are less healthy, that still goes into GDP. If you live in a bad neighborhood and you need to put bars on your windows, the putting of the bars on, you have to hire somebody to do that. That goes into GDP. Okay, so anything here, if you live in a bad area, you got to hire more cops, got to have more jails. And so here's what I want you to write. It does not include quality of life. And I always make the joke, when we were in the classroom, I point my thumb at the wall to Mr. Mellon's class, AP Psychology, and I said, if you want to find out if it's making people happier, that's who you need to talk to, the psych people. The econ people, it's not that they don't care, they do care, it's just not factored in here. Okay, moving on. All right, real GDP. Real GDP is nominal. Now remember, nominal is whatever you say it is. And so if you just, and GDP is P times Q, price times quantity. So if you find the price of something, multiply it times quantity, that is nominal GDP. If you take out how much the inflation is, that is real GDP. And we're going to probably do some problems tomorrow. Remember, we did that in class where I'll work up some of these. Just remember, nominal is not adjusted for inflation. Adjusted for inflation is real. And we're going to keep seeing these words nominal and real coming back to us. Okay, how do you calculate this? Real GDP equals nominal GDP and the price index in hundredths, which is the deflator. And I'm going to explain this tomorrow. For right now, just copy down the formula. And here's an example right here. So you can just copy all this stuff down. And you can pause the film here and copy this down. And again, if you don't understand it, this is going to be the purpose of my videos tomorrow, to show you how to calculate this and to give you some problems to work through. And at this point, we are going to stop this first video.